Welcome to episode 69 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football, shoot the breeze, and make even the replacement refs cringe. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper Joseph. How's it going, man?
Well, not going to share it here, but Jeremy knows. Doing pretty good, and I can't wait for next week.
I know what you're talking about, and I won't divulge either, but I'm glad you're having a good week. I think you're having a little bit better of a week than me. As you may be able to tell, I sound like I have something up my nose, and that would be because I have boogers up my nose. I have been sick for the last week plus, and I felt good enough to do a shorter show tonight. I do have a little bit of a cough, so I'll try to mute myself as much as possible, but we're gonna do a little bit of a truncated show tonight, just so that I don't have to talk as long. So we are live right here on YouTube every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, or just what the heck, whenever we feel like it. If you like what you hear and want to support us, don't hesitate to like, share, and if you're feeling extra generous, subscribe. But of course, you can like, share, and subscribe even if you think you could run this show better than us, or if you think you have a better voice than me. So this week we are saying, we're saying goodbye to the regular season and saying hello to the postseason with game highlights, who wrecked face this week, a special segment, and of course, we're going to round out our show with our wild card week predictions. So let's go ahead and dive into our game highlights for the 18th week of the NFL regular season. We were going to have a game of the week, but due to my throat situation, we're just going to talk about highlights. And originally our game was actually going to be, Joseph, you may not even remember this, but our game of the week was going to be Chargers at Raiders, which would have been a perfect game to do game of the week for. So apologies that we're not actually going to be covering the game in detail, but I did want to dive into a couple of things about that. So that was a overtime. I think, was it 30, 39, 36?
35, 32.
35-32 overtime win by the Raiders. They kicked a field goal in the final seconds of overtime to secure their playoff berth. Both teams knew that going into the game, if that the loser was going home unless there was a tie, in which case there wasn't a loser and both teams would have made the playoffs.
If I think the Steelers also would have lost.
No, but the Steelers had already played because this was Sunday night. So the Steelers had already beat the Ravens in overtime. So the Steelers were sitting on a playoff spot barring a tie.
But then if if there was a tie, they both would have kicked out the Steelers?
Yes. And that's actually where the question that I wanted to pose comes into play. So if you're watching this and you're a Raiders or a Chargers fan, apologies that we're not going to go into this game in more detail, and apologies that we didn't cover those teams in a little bit more detail this season. We may have a chance to cover the Raiders a little bit more now that they're in the playoffs this year. But so here was the scenario at the end of this game. So in overtime, you get 2 timeouts, right? Each team gets 2 timeouts. It's a 10-minute period. And both teams knew at this point, because the Steelers had already played, both teams knew that if it was a tie, that both teams would make it, and the Steelers wouldn't. But think about it in the context of the game. Both head coaches knew a tie would send them both to the playoffs. So the Raiders are driving down. I think they had exchanged, if I remember correctly, they had exchanged punts, or maybe both had kicked field goals. I can't remember exactly. I think it was, I don't know. I don't want to make it up. I think it was let me actually just pull this up so I'm conveying accurate information. I couldn't remember if there were exchange of field goals in overtime or not. So final game, yes. So there were 9 points scored in overtime. So the Raiders went down, scored a field goal. then the Chargers responded with a field goal. So at that point, the next score would win, and they were the clock was running out at that point. The Raiders were driving down. They had no timeouts left, and and the Chargers had won, and at with 38 seconds left in overtime, and the Raiders were running to the line, trying to keep moving down the field. With 38 seconds left, the Chargers called a timeout. And everyone at the time seemed to agree that this was a terrible decision. Because, well, so the Raiders were not quite in field goal range yet. They needed another, I think it was like another 10 or 15 yards to get into field goal range. So if the Chargers hadn't called the timeout, then the Raiders would have needed to, run down the field, probably spike it and lose a down, and then have to make a couple of plays to the sidelines to get within field goal range to then hopefully have enough time, not have anybody tackled in bounds to then have enough time to kick the field goal. But instead, the Chargers decided to help them out by calling a timeout. So now the Raiders they don't have to worry about losing a down for a spike. They can plan their next play with more time, and they ended up getting in field goal range, and in the final seconds of the game, they kicked a field goal. Now, I thought that decision was interesting too, because anything can happen in a field goal, right? This was not a chip shot, but it also wasn't a 65-yarder or something. It was I want to say it was like 43 yards or something
47,
like that.
47.
47 yards. Thank you. So anything can happen, right? It could get blocked, and a blocked field goal can be returned, right? So in that kind of scenario where your playoff berth is on the line, even the announcers are saying just kneel down and you're going to the playoffs, right? You don't have to risk this at all. But instead, the Raiders coach opted to kick the field goal, and by definition, by making that field goal, they knocked out the Chargers. And I wonder if there was a pride aspect of that, like we want there to be a winner in this game. So what do you think of the Chargers coach, his decision to call a timeout with 38 seconds left in overtime?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, unless he didn't, like, if there's evidence to suggest that he really did know that tying was him for the playoffs, maybe he forgot, maybe, I don't know, like, just because it was known to the sports world, I don't know if they knew that. So if he did knew that, he made that decision, yeah, that's a bad call. In fact, I wonder if that's almost a bad enough call to be fired over. Chargers had a disappointing season. They were up and down, have firepower. They do have a good team, but they're up and down. And, that decision right there could have actually cost them the playoffs. Best the division rival. So, yeah, if he knows the age of the internet, someone's got to tell him, you see the scoreboard, oh, the Steelers made it, if we tie, then we're in. So, yeah, might have just been pride or both for both teams to try to, quote unquote, win, play to win the game. But really, if tying gets you in and there's the risk of losing, then just get rid of the risk. So yeah, whether it's the timeout or the Raiders, just end the game as soon as you can. Because yeah, what if there's a fumble? What if there's a pick? There's a crazy play where there's a blocked kick. Who knows? Just end the game and go to the playoffs.
Right. Excuse me. Yeah, I agree. I'm actually looking up the Chargers homepage on ESPN, and there's an article saying that Brandon Staley, the head coach, said that the timeout was to bring in the right personnel. So I don't know if I believe that. Like he said that it was to bring in the right personnel. So I don't know if that's a valid enough reason. I mean, the Raiders were probably just going to run the ball, right? I don't know. I don't think they were going to try anything super risky there because they didn't need that many yards. And if they ended up not making it, they're still going to the playoffs anyway. If they end up not getting into field goal range, that is, they're going to the playoffs anyway. So I thought I thought both decisions, the decision to call the timeout as well as the decision to kick the field goal, were both weird.
Here's the thing. We need to go back and watch the game and see what personnel changes he made. Because if there were not substantial personnel changes, then
Agreed.
Yeah.
That would be one way of gathering some evidence on that. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that game. So the Raiders win. The Chargers. I mean, I can't even imagine being a Chargers fan. After the season that they had, and that the losing it, getting knocked out in that way. That's really crushing. And a lot of us wanted to see Justin Herbert in the playoffs. So, but one other game I wanted to quickly mention was, of course, how can I not mention 49ers at Rams, the second largest comeback in the 2021 season of 17 points. The Niners were down 17-0 and came back to win 27-24 in overtime. There were so many players and so many things that allowed this to happen. I mean, just to mention a few things, second-year receivers having a breakout game and scoring 2 touchdowns. Deebo Samuel throwing a touchdown pass. Jimmy Garoppolo having the drives of his life. Our fullback having to play as the holder because our punter had a head injury, and our kicker also had to punt twice, and he punted over 40 yards both times. Just crazy stuff that happened, and the Niners secured a playoff berth with that win. So the scenario was that if the Niners had lost, they would have needed the Saints to lose, which they didn't. The Falcons decided to wet the bed on Sunday, so the only hope for the Niners was a win, and they pulled it off. So fantastic game. As far as games that made me go through that gambit of emotions since I started watching the Niners back in 2011, I think the only game that quite made me feel like this was the
Giants. Yeah.
No, because we lost that game.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
It was the Falcons Niners NFC Championship game in 2012.
Okay.
Because they were down 14-0 in the first half, and then came back. And I remember you and I were watching the game in college in the apartment, and I told you at halftime, I said, everything went right for the Falcons in the first half. It was like everything went perfectly. They aren't possibly going to be able to keep that up. And the Niners end up winning on a walk-off field goal in that game to go on and lose the Super Bowl to the Ravens. So
I don't remember us watching this.
We did. It was at least the end. I don't know if we watched the whole game together, but we did watch the end. The end together. I remember watching the final field goal kick with you. That's okay if you don't remember it. I'll remember it for the both of us. Sean McVay broke his streak of winning. He was 45-0 when leading at halftime, and we broke that streak. So I just so memorable that I'll never forget this game. All the emotions that I felt. I had given up when they were down 17-0. I had given up, and to see them come back like that was something they had not done all season. So really looking forward to what they can show us in the playoffs. All right. So unless there's any other games you wanted to highlight, Joseph, we'll go ahead and roll straight into our Rec Face segment.
Well, I'll quickly say, I just love how the Dolphins can beat the Patriots in a useless game.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, okay, and then of course the Colts, dude. The Colts. So Jeremy, can you read out loud exactly what I texted you about the Colts?
Yeah. Let me pull up the text while you're talking.
Yeah, I'll let Jeremy read out this quote. I'll give a comment about basically the fact that
shame
the Colts,
one.
Yeah, read what I said quote for word.
Yeah. So Joseph, after let's see, this was Was this a morning game?
Yes, it had to
Okay.
have been.
Yeah, so at 2:58 you texted me and said, shame on the Colts, dot dot dot. Just absolute shame on them.
Yes, and I stand by that statement. Um, for two reasons. One, just the fact that they beat good teams. They looked like they were going to probably, they could have won the division at the end. The Titans pulled away, but they were looking like they were a solid lock for the playoffs. It was going to be the Raiders and Colts. I'm sorry, Raiders and Chargers, and you know, Steelers fighting for it. The Colts were for sure lock. And then they lose to the Jags, and then to think that, man, what if we could have had that spot? We lost to the Colts, and the Colts had that one win a few weeks ago, I think against the Patriots. That really hurt us. They had a win against the Bills or the Patriots or someone that like really sealed the deal against the Dolphins. So that really hurt. I remember texting you about it. Um, that really hurt us. So the fact that they had this game that hurt us, and then they end up losing to the Jags, and now it's like their season. They don't get a good draft pick. What do they do with Wentz now? And they miss the playoffs. Like what a terrible situation. And the fact that the Dolphins then go on and beat the Patriots, it doesn't matter. Ugh.
Yeah, and what's funny is the ESPN says the Indianapolis Colts got clowned in Jacksonville. So, um, I think that win would have locked a spot for them, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So just think that both you and the Colts were a Jags game away from the playoffs.
Oh, don't tell me. Oh gosh. Oh, that's wow. Oh man.
I mean, the Jags won 3 games this season, and one of them was against the Dolphins, another against the Colts, and a third against the Bills.
What?
So I know it's funny. They're all 3 of their wins came against teams that were over 500.
Wow.
So yeah, it was amazing. I was in shock. I think everybody's in shock. Um, and Jonathan Taylor's going to get Offensive Player of the Year too, after
Yeah.
all that. So
And Carson Wentz is still below average or average quarterback. So.
yeah, exactly. I told you that he
Yeah.
was going to sink them, and I shouldn't have been right, but I ended up being right. So yeah, so let's move on to our well, and don't worry, we'll have time to commiserate over the Dolphins in a later segment in the coming weeks. We're planning to do a post-mortem, and we'll see when the Niners get knocked out. If they get knocked out, we'll do a joint post-mortem. Okay, so for Rec Face, we've got a couple of quarterbacks. We got some epic rushing performances. We got a couple of receivers, some defenders. A little bit light on the defenders this week, and then a couple of pretty juicy got wrecked. So Joseph, why don't you go ahead and start off with the quarterbacks?
Yeah. So we have Tom Brady wrapping up his MVP season. Going to win the MVP. The absolute shocker if he didn't. 29 of 37, 326 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. And then Dak Prescott, who I don't know who he broke one of Tony Romo's records. I don't know. I think it was single season touchdowns.
Yeah, it was single season passing touchdowns by a Cowboy.
Got it. Which needs an asterisk because of the 17th game. A lot of these they'll need asterisks, but still. He was 21 of 27 for 295 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no picks. Listen to this. That's a 151.8 passer rating and a 98.6 QBR. You can only get 100. That's the highest you can get. So he had an incredible game. Then
it was against. Let's be fair. It was against the Eagles' backups.
Yeah, that is true.
But still, we'll give credit where credit's due.
And then someone who helped him with that was Cedric Wilson, who had 5 receptions for 119 yards, a 23.8 average, and 2 touchdowns. And then the rest, 3 epic team rush performances here. So the Washington football team had 226 yards on 6.1 average with a rushing touchdown. And then Seattle had 202 rushing yards on a 6.7 average and 2 touchdowns. And the Ravens had 249 rushing yards on 6.9 average and a rushing touchdown. And that was all done without Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's pretty
So,
amazing.
yeah. The Ravens, I think, have been a top 3 rushing team the last 3 years in a row.
Yes.
So,
Yep. Okay, so we got. I have to mention Debo Samuel, who had just a phenomenal all around game. 4 receptions for 95 yards, 8 carries for 45 yards, which is a total of 140 scrimmage yards, and then he also had a rushing touchdown, and then he also threw a touchdown, had a passing touchdown, a 24-yard touchdown completion to J1 Jennings. And yeah, that guy, he's uh, even though he's not going to win Offensive Player of the Year because there's one or two guys that you could argue deserve it more than him, but as far as his versatility and the level of talent that he has playing different types of positions on the field, he had a year unlike any other that I've seen in recent history. So it was really special to watch him, and I hope he can do some epic stuff in the playoffs for us. And then I had just 3 defenders this week. So Jordan Brooks, a linebacker for Seattle, had 20 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Him and Bobby Wagner are both sitting at the 2 and 3 spots for most tackles of the season. Jaywan Bentley, linebacker for the Patriots, had 17 tackles. And then lastly, Eric Armstead, defensive tackle for the Niners, had 7 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. The Niners pressured Stafford on 28 of 37 dropbacks on Sunday, which
28
is
of how many?
of 37.
Wow.
Yeah, he was under fire the whole game. Our defensive line completely took over that game in the second half. Okay, so on Got Wrecked, here's some fun stats. So the Giants passing, talk about. I might even be more disappointed in the Giants than I am in the Jags, to be honest, because the Giants have had more time to go through this rebuild.
Yes. Oh,
The
yeah.
the Giants are pathetic, and so Jake Fromm, 15 of 31 for 103 yards, which is a 3.3 average, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, got sacked 3 times for a rating of 40.1. And then the best of them all was the Jets, who got steamrolled by the Bills. The Jets had Zach Wilson was 7 of 20 for 87 yards and a touchdown, got sacked 8 times and had a 66 rating.
Oh, Wilson got sacked 8 times?
Yes.
I missed that.
And yeah, and they had 17 carries for 48 yards, which is a 2.8 average. But the best stat of them all is when you factor in the negative 79 sack yards in their team stats. The Jets had 53 total yards.
You know what, dude?
To the Bills 424.
When I was looking at for Got Wrecked, I think I just passed by the Jets. I saw Wilson's stats by themselves. I thought that's pretty bad, but it's not. I didn't really pop out enough. But I did not really catch the sacks and the total yards.
Yeah, so yeah, they had 53 total yards to the Bills 424, and they had 4 first downs to the Bills 25. So yeah, that's.
I know people disagree on this, Jeremy. I think you're probably somewhere in the middle. I feel like I can sway you either way, but I think one of the college championship teams that played yesterday could have done a better job. I mean, Wilson is a rookie, and the Jets are pretty bad, so who knows?
Yeah, I don't. That's hard to say.
4 first downs is pretty bad, dude.
No, it is pretty bad. It's just I think it's just hard because it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. But yeah, maybe they could have. Maybe they could have. That is a pretty putrid performance. I don't think we had any teams. I think 53 offensive yards or net yards is probably the lowest that we've seen all season. I would be surprised if there was anything less than that. I think I might have lost you, Joseph. Are you there? Oh, I hear the beep on Skype, which means
Yeah.
that you're reconnecting.
Oh,
All right, are you with us, Joseph? It sounds like maybe a no.
yeah.
Okay, can you hear me? Hmm.
Yeah. Love you.
Okay, so you can hear me, it sounds like, but I can't really hear you. It's kind of choppy and not. You just sent me a message in Skype that said, I can har you. Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's hang up the call and we'll reset the call. All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Say something.
I never not. Hello, hello. I
Yeah.
never not heard you.
Okay. All right. So your mic is a little warbly now. So maybe do what you did before to fix it.
I that has to work out now because I'm talking right into it.
Okay. It sounds a bit warbly is the best word I can think of.
I won't know of anything else to do because I'm holding it in my hand and I'm talking right into it. Is
Okay. Maybe put a little bit of distance between it and your mouth.
that better?
Maybe a little bit, not marginally.
Honestly, that's probably the best I can do. I can't really
Okay. We
do
might just
much
have to
more.
live with it for tonight. That's fine. As long as we at least like we can hear each other, that's enough for now. So apologies for the technical difficulties. It seems like we have some kind of sound issue almost every week. Okay, so let's get through the next couple of segments real quick. So we got tricky picks. Last week I was 1-3. Joseph was 2-2. So we're now tied at 28-34 on the season, which we can't allow ties. So we're gonna have to do some sort of postseason tricky picks in future weeks just to break the tie. But we're no tricky picks for tonight since we're trying to keep the show a little bit shorter. Um, did want to go over in our special segment tonight. Wanted to go over just a couple of quick news hits and then go over basically the idea behind this segment was to go over the hot seat. So which coaches are on the hot seat? But since there's a bunch of coaches that have already been fired as of yesterday, we'll just go over the news for those teams and then we'll look at the playoff teams to determine who's on the hot seat there if there's a potentially a team that's counting on a specific playoff performance in order to keep their coach. So I'll rattle off the news real quick, and then Joseph, you can share your thoughts on any of these if you're surprised or think anything was unjustified or whatever. So Seahawks news: Wilson is likely to stay, and there's uncertainty about Pete Carroll. It sounds like that decision's has not been made yet, and it will probably be made in the coming weeks. Steelers: Big Ben is likely to retire after the postseason. Browns:
Not a hall.
what was that?
Sorry, not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's well. The commentators would disagree with you, but I agree with you.
Well, they also think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer and Dwight Howard's a Hall of Famer, so I don't really care what they think.
I'd actually be curious to know which commentators think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer.
Too many. I mean,
Fair enough,
anything
because
worth
he's not.
zero. Yeah.
And now any 49er fans that are listening to the show instantly stop listening. So the Browns, Mayfield is expected to return as starter.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one, man. I think you trade. You have the team. You need to get your starter. Like they have a team. You need to get the guy around him. I don't think he's the guy. I think this was the year. Like next year for Tua was like this year for Mayfield.
I
I think
agree with
this.
that. They did get kind of hampered by injury this year. But yeah, I agree that this was kind of his year to break out and prove that he can be the guy, and it just he did not take command of the team. So um, they had a promising start, but then they really petered off, and yeah, I don't know how they're gonna manage that situation, but we can open that can of worms in a later episode. So, excuse me, coaches that were fired include the Broncos, the Vikings, the Dolphins, the Bears, and the Giants.
Can you
Uh,
say those again slower?
the
Those again?
Broncos, the Vikings, the Dolphins, the Bears, and the Giants.
So there's two of those that I don't fully agree with, and I want you to guess which two first, and then I'll explain.
I think you don't agree with the Dolphins, and it's either going to be the Vikings or the Broncos.
It's the Vikings.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't agree with the Dolphins. I was a little surprised to see that. I mean, like it, it can't be well how it can't be Flores' fault for Tua, right? Like he wasn't the one holding them back to get Watson. He didn't like what did he do wrong? I don't. I, Flores definitely won the team. Like the players liked him, and players just. I think the if there was one thing to try to hamper him on, it would be the lack of the offensive line. But they try to do stuff like they were switching guys around, and honestly, I don't know how much you see that in the league. Like I feel like teams would be more likely to just play similar offensive line setups. I actually kind of liked that there was experimentation. He was moving guys from left to right side, and he was trying to. I liked Flores. You know, he was I think he was more of a defensive mind coach, but I don't recall there being any terrible play calls. I just don't think Flores was the problem. I think that there were a couple close games that we lost. Again, we're a Jags game away from the playoffs. You know, it was like, and it wasn't like I mean you go 9-8, and you didn't have a super easy schedule. Um, Tua played not as well as I think he should have. He wasn't terrible. I don't see why there had to be any firings. And if there was, I don't see why Flores. I just don't get it. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah,
Like what do they do now? Like, what do they
yeah,
do?
I
I don't.
agree. Yeah, that is a big question. I was surprised. That was the one that surprised me the most of those five teams. Um, because you guys have actually had back to back winning records. You just missed the playoffs both years. And I the one I think the one thing I would nail on the coach would be just the really inconsistent play that you guys had this season. Like it was really inconsistent. Probably more so than any other team that was over 500. So that's on the coach. And but I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say it was that way last year. Like I think you guys were more consistent last year with Fitzpatrick. So I don't know. I think that is a bit of a surprise. I don't really know who they're hoping to pick up instead, but I have to assume that Flores is going to get a job with another team. I mean, I think
Oh
he
yeah,
uh, right.
yeah. I just don't get it. I don't. Is it really a better option to get like the thing is my I think the impression was that the team liked him. I mean, I think he won the team. I mean, if you win the team and you're working through things, I I just don't I don't know. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't think it helps us, and I don't know who we're going to look for now to really fix things. You know, you're bringing a new system, and yeah, I think they've done decent since he's been there for their draft picks. You know, for the past couple of years. I do not get it at all. And then the Vikings one, I don't get the Vikings one as well. Um, they had some injuries with Cook, I think. Cousins had to be out because of COVID stuff, but Cousins had a good season, and they just had a tough schedule. They were 1 or 2 games, just I don't know how much if the Vikings need to get either.
Yeah, I think the Vikings is actually a little bit more clear to me than the Dolphins because the Vikings have gotten since Mike Zimmer took over in 2014, the Vikings have gotten worse. They have not gotten better. They were more dominant or at least more competitive. They were never dominant, but they were more competitive in 2015, 2016. They went to the playoffs in 2019, right? And then they've now had back-to-back seasons where they missed the playoffs. They were under 500 this year. Their defense has had no identity, even though they spent a lot of money on defensive contracts. Like when you got a coach, you got to at least either make the team better or keep the team good. Like those are the two things you're looking for, and Mike Zimmer hasn't done that.
That's fair. Ugh. Yeah, no, those are some good points. I did some good analysis there. That's he's been the coach since 2015.
2014.
Okay, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I buy that because wasn't it? Oh, was it 2014 or 2015? They had that really good defense. 16.
I think it was 2016. I think, and that was the year that they got knocked out because their field goal kicker missed a chip shot. Where they lost to Seattle.
Yeah, like 9-6 or something.
Yeah, it was like 12-9 or some really low score.
Right, and then they had miracle the next season against the Saints, or 2 seasons ago after that when the Saints lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 2019, wasn't it?
It feels longer ago, but it could have been then. Because that's when they had Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs.
Oh, that would have been
2017 or 18 was that time. Because the Saints I think got also hurt the next year when they had that bad play against the Rams. So yeah, I agree with you. If he's been the coach that long, those performances, I agree. And then getting Cousins and yeah, I think this year would be more on the coach and less on Cousins because Cousins actually played pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it is mostly on the coach. And then in addition to those firings that happened this week, the Jaguars and the Raiders had already, John Gruden resigned, and then Urban Meyer had already been fired, so they're going to be looking for replacements. I don't know if they'll keep their interims as permanent coaches or not, but
honestly, I think Flores would be a good fit for Jacksonville. I hope the Jags hire Flores. Young, energetic, still there in Florida. I think Flores would probably be a better fit for Jags than Urban Meyer was. So I hope they get him. And
I think you're right about that. That actually, I think that could be a good fit. Okay, so as far as the postseason teams, I kind of went through each one. There's only 12, and I mean, I'll go through each of the matchups, and then we can stop if we think there's a team that has someone on the hot seat. So the first game is Raiders Bengals. Obviously, Raiders are looking for somebody. The Bengals aren't firing their coach. No way. Then we got Patriots and Bills. No way either of those coaches are getting fired. Like they're not. Belichick and I forget the name of the Bills coach, but
I'm seeing his face. I think. Well, here's the thing: the Bills, though, we had that one interesting talk comparing the Bills with the Titans. If the Bills put up a stinker, he may not be fired, but he'll be on the hot seat for next.
I think that's fair. I think for the Patriots, yeah. Okay, so backing up a little bit, that's actually a good point. I forgot to consider that. So for the Bengals, this is the first time they've been in the playoffs in at least 2 or 3 years. So
Joe Burrow's young, so
right. So they're on the rise, so that they're not expected to do a whole lot this year. The Patriots are also on the rise. They've got a rookie quarterback, so they're not expected to be Super Bowl champions or anything this year. The Bills, however, have been dominant for a couple years, and their expectations are much higher. So if they come in and score 13 points against the Bills at home or against the Patriots at home and lose, then yeah, I think it would be fair to say, how can this coach handle the big game, and should we keep him around, kind of thing. Um, so I agree that's fair. Then you got Eagles and Bucks. I So start with the Eagles. The Eagles were one of the teams on my list of, like, maybe, like, if because
They're like rebuilding, but not. They're weird. Like
yeah,
their guy. It hurts. Yeah, it hurts their guy. And yeah, the Eagles are weird. Like as long as they don't get blown out, they might just keep rolling with it and see what they can do next year. And Arians isn't going to go anywhere. Like even if the Bucks get destroyed, I don't see them getting rid of Arians. Like how do
yeah, I
you?
don't either. I don't either. Yeah, I think for the Eagles, the linchpin for hot seat is not going to be the playoff performance. I think it'll be next year's record. Uh, just kind of more of their long term success rather than just a couple of important games. Um, the Bucks, yeah, I agree. I don't think Arians is not going anywhere. 49ers Cowboys,
Ooh,
the Niners aren't getting rid of Shanahan. The expectations are high, as well they should be. I mean, the Niners probably would have been in the playoffs last year if they hadn't had, 2/3 of their starters hurt. So the last time they were in the playoffs, they went to a Super Bowl. They have the talent to do that again. So the question is, are they going to be able to make it that far? They had a 10-7, I would say, is a disappointing record for them this year. They should have been better than that. And so I would say that if they go into Dallas and they put up a stinker, I think the seat gets a little warm. But if they have a close loss or they beat the Cowboys and then they lose in the next round, I don't think that's gonna put a black mark on Shanahan. And then for the Cowboys, I mean,
you
I don't.
gotta win, man. I think they have to win. I think they have to. Dallas always has kind of a you know um, yeah, I think Dallas has to win, or else there can be some issues. Dallas is usually like that, and having Dak come back and
I
play
mean, but do they
well. And
do they need to win a Super Bowl, or
no, they need to win this playoff. If they lose this playoff game, in terms of overall playoff run, they need to beat the Niners, and they need to at least be somewhat competitive whoever they play in the next round, because they'll most likely be the away team next round.
that's true? Yeah, I think I can. Excuse me. I think I can agree with that. And then we got Steelers Chiefs. I think the Chiefs aren't dismantling anything. They're not doing anything. The Steelers. I I don't think you get rid of Tomlin because Big Ben's retiring, so they're going to be in for a personnel shakeup next year because of that anyway. So,
Wait, who's retiring?
Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, I thought you said Mike Tomlin.
No. I'm saying I say you don't get rid of Mike Tomlin
Oh,
because Big Ben's retiring and they're going to be reshuffling personnel anyway, right?
I
So,
got so lost there. I thought we were still talking about the Cowboys for a second. I got a little
oh no,
stumbled.
I had moved
So,
on to Steelers Chiefs because I agreed with
do
what
you
you said
agree?
about the Cowboys.
Got it. Okay, so Steelers Chiefs. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I don't think either of them go anywhere.
Yeah, because the Steelers eked in, right? And I think it's very clear that they need some sort of jolt on offense going in, moving forward. And I don't think there's an expectation. I don't think there's a Super Bowl expectation for them. And so I don't think Tomlin's, I wouldn't even say his seat's warm, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
and Chiefs. I mean, back-to-back Super Bowls. This was an off kind of a weird year, but then they got hot. I mean, So if they lose, I think the seat gets a little warm, but as long as they make the playoffs next year and win one game, then that might reduce it, depending on how they do. But if they lose and they miss the playoffs next year, that might be it. Um, but if they win, it's not warm at all. I don't think.
And by win, you mean just beat the Steelers or win the Super Bowl?
No, no, no. If they beat the Steelers, because in their next game, because aren't they the 3 seed?
They're the 2 seed, aren't they?
Okay, they're the 2 seed.
I'm
So
pretty
yeah, they
sure.
should
Let
be.
me check.
You know what? Unless they play like the
Yeah, they're
Bills
the
and the
2 seed.
Bills kind of edge them out. Yeah. So the Chiefs do need to, I think, win against the Steelers, but they don't have to. They don't have to go to the championship.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I could see that.
But it's up in the air because they had an off year. Then they got hot. They have gone 2 Super Bowls in a row. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
honestly, like as a fan, it would be disappointing if they lost in the divisional round. But as far as keeping Andy Reid, like they're not. You, why would you fire a coach that's taken you to 2 Super Bowls and a divisional round, right? Like you just don't. That's not.
yeah.
Nobody can sustain Super Bowl success every year. So I don't think it's justified at all to get rid of Andy Reid if they lose next week, or not, not this upcoming week, but the week after. Okay, and then the last two teams are the Cardinals and the Rams. Honestly, I you know this was sort of supposed to be the Cardinals' breakout year, so I don't think the expectations are super high for them. And for the Rams, McVay's obviously been to a Super Bowl before, but this was his first year with Stafford. So I think I think if they got to a championship game and lost, I think that would be okay. I think anything short of that would be a little disappointing because they did, they're pretty short on draft picks now because of all the picks they've spent on players. So they kind of went all in. I told you, I sent you a text message earlier this year when they picked up Odell Beckham. I said they're, or no, not Odell. It was Von Miller. I said they're it. You know, I said something along the lines of like they should be mocked if they don't win the Super Bowl or something. Um, so what do you think about that? I mean, do you think it would be disappointing if they didn't make a Super Bowl?
Ooh, they have to go to the championship. Go to the Super Bowl. So the thing is, if they lose to the Packers or because they're going to be the 3 seed, right?
They're the 4th seed.
If they lose to the Packers or the Bucks in championship game, and it's not a blowout, I mean, come on, you're going up against Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Like, how do you really expect to be like, oh, we went all in for Matthew Stafford? So they need to get to the championship game, um, unless, of course, they play the Bucks on the way there. I don't know how that may work out. I'm not sure. Or the Packers because the bye. So yeah, as long as if they lose to one of those two teams in the championship game or on their way to the championship game, then I think fans should not be like. I don't think this should be on the hot seat. Maybe there's a little bit of warmness, but it's like. Hold on, I lost.
Okay. More sound difficulties. I can. It's a bit quiet. Excuse me. No. Slightly.
Okay. Um.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. Not a Super Bowl or bust. It's almost a championship game or bust. But I just can't expect McVay to really be on the hot seat if they lose to Rodgers or Brady. I mean, seriously,
Yeah, I think
is he
that's
really
fair.
going to be on the hot seat if they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think they definitely need to win this first game, and then probably should win the second game. But I don't. If if they had a close loss in the divisional round, I also don't think that would be I don't think that would necessarily warm up McVay's seat too much. Okay, so that's it for our news and postseason hot seats segment. So now we're just gonna go over our predictions real quick. So, I was 8-8 this last week, and Joseph was 9-7. So Joseph is now one up on me. And if you do decide to stop the count now, Joseph would win by one game for the regular season. But in the past couple of years, we've combined that with the postseason record. So we'll see how it turns out after all the postseason is said and done. Um, so let's do our wild card week predictions. Only 6 games this week, so I'll go ahead and start off with the first one, which is the Raiders at Bengals. There were a handful of these games that were not easy to do, but and this was one of them. I am picking Bengals, but the Raiders have been a little hot. They're kind of going into the playoffs a little hot, so I think this is just going to be a good game, but I'm going Bengals.
I'm going Bengals as well. Patriots Bills. I think the Bills start to turn it on, and I think the Bills mean business.
Agreed. I picked Bills as well. Eagles at Bucks. I'm going Bucks.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. Niners Cowboys. I'm sorry. Cowboys.
I know. I knew you were going to do that to me. So I have to go Niners. I mean, I genuinely actually do think that based on the way that they played this last week that they have a pretty good chance to go in there and win. So I think this will just be a good high scoring game. Okay, and then Steelers at Chiefs. Chiefs.
I think this is the easiest game to pick besides maybe Eagles Bucks.
Agreed.
Chiefs. And then last game, Cardinals Rams. I'm going Cardinals.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a little surprised actually.
Going Cardinals. So maybe McVay's seat will be hot.
All right, I'm going Rams because the last time they played, the Rams had the upper hand, and the Rams have the home field. So, the Cardinals have been a little bit iffy the last few weeks. They've lost a lot of games. So, all right, so that's our predictions in the book for Wild Card Week, and we said this was going to be a short show. It ended up being almost an hour. So I gotta turn out or turn off or go to bed or whatever because my voice is starting to go. So thanks so much for coming out. That is a wrap for our episode 69. If you didn't fall asleep during tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. Tonight's show will be available immediately after we go offline. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.